Have you ever played a real-time strategy game like Age of Empires and just built layers and layers of walls and towers just to see how long you could hold off the enemy? Well, have I got the game for you. They Are Billions. Released on PC back in 2017 and consoles in 2019, They Are Billions shows a different side of real-time strategy games. And since its launch, it's had multiple updates and even a full-blown free campaign mode added to the game. So let's have a look about what exactly They Are Billions is, how it plays on the console, and if it may be the game for you. They Are Billions is an easy yet hard game to explain. At its core, it's a real-time strategy horde defense game. However, it's a lot more than that. While it's a real-time strategy game where you gather resources, upgrade technology, build military and defensive structures, the gameplay is very similar to a city management game where you have building placement grids and limited spacing. So just as much as the wave of enemies is a challenge, so is proper city planning and resource management. You'll lose as many matches from poor city layout that let a single zombie sneak past your defenses than actual waves of zombies. But let's start from the beginning. First and foremost, They Are Billions is a single player game that has a campaign, survival mode, and weekly challenge. The game has a futuristic steampunk inspired aesthetic and has a fixed camera angle and unique art style. The aesthetic is surprisingly a nice point of difference. So when it comes to gameplay, the game's survival mode difficulty works by modifying the amount of days you need to survive and the strength of enemy waves. To unlock new survival maps, you need to gain a certain amount of points, which is based off how difficult you set the map modifiers. So this means you work on beating one map at a time and unlock newer maps. So what does a game of They Are Billions look like? So you start the game off with your command center and a handful of rangers. You'll slowly build buildings on the game's grid system to expand and upgrade your town. But, like I mentioned before, resource management and building placement play a huge role in the game. So buildings will generally cost a few different resources. This can include food, manpower, electricity, wood, stone, and iron. You'll constantly be juggling between making sure you have enough population to build new buildings or create new troops, while also making sure you have enough power and food to create new houses. The interdependence of resources adds a constant variable into building. The more you play, you'll get used to making sure you balance your resources. However, this system will take time to get used to, and it can mean for new players, you can feel trapped, as you need certain resources to expand, but you can't build it as you're dependent on another resource. Speaking of management, building placement plays a huge role in the game. So maps are procedurally generated, so this means a different map layout every time. On top of this, maps have physical boundaries you can't build on and enemies can't go through. This means as the game starts, it is important to scout with your troops and find possible choke points to expand your base. So you might be wondering, but why is building placement so important? So when you start the game, there's already zombies spawned on the map, and random hordes will attack you. So when a zombie takes out a building's defense rating, it instantly infects everyone in the building. So even one zombie that happens to sneak past your defenses can convert a whole building and start instantly multiplying the amount of enemies in your base. And this can be game ending during the early game when they hit your houses. So one zombie can cascade into a giant horde that takes out your whole base. I know what some people are thinking now. Wow, that sounds unforgiving. And that's kind of the point of They Are Billions. The game is hard. By design, it's one of the most challenging real-time strategy games that has been released in years. It also doesn't have a save feature. It does have the save and quit, but it doesn't have save checkpoints within missions. So you could be playing for hours on a map and lose everything just because one infected slipped past your defenses. So understandably, this style of difficulty may not be for everyone. However, this does create a high stakes game where you're constantly questioning base management, you're second guessing every bit of expansion, and triple checking your defenses. For a zombie horde defense real-time strategy game, it adds a nice, unique perspective. Also, in the game you can build different troops and send them across the map to scout, find resources, or just make new defensive positions. To keep things varied, the game also has different types of infected. So these can include big infected with more health, some infected that can run, and even later, a type that can actually climb your wall. And finally, in typical horde mode fashion, the game will generally end with a massive wave of thousands of zombies that will attack you from all sides of the map, so be warned. Now with the survival part out of the way, a massive update that was added to the game after launch was the new Empire campaign mode. The campaign mode is interesting. The mode has you mission by mission slowly expanding the Empire, one of the last remaining cities. The campaign has 3 different types of missions. There are the swarm missions, where you spend points building a certain amount of troops and barricades to defend against a preset number of zombies. There are the colony missions that generally play like a survival map, however with some objectives like get your population to a certain amount and take out some infected buildings on the map. And finally, you have the scouting missions that are solo hero focused missions. Now, scouting missions as part of the campaign feel extremely disconnected from the rest. They make you control a single character to finish a map objective, and as you play through the campaign, you'll also gain levels and upgrade your hero. And this this never really seems to relate back to the core systems and premise of the game. Scouting missions aside, one of the biggest issues of the campaign is the technology tree. So in typical RTS campaign fashion, you start the campaign off with limited access to certain troops and buildings. However, the point of difference for They Are Billions is as you complete missions, you are given a limited amount of points to help upgrade certain units and buildings on an overall campaign technology tree. This means that units and buildings do not auto unlock based on the needs of the mission. So this will require you to have an understanding of what is to come to ensure you spend your points on the correct technology unlocks. While missions won't be unplayable without the right unlocks, on certain missions it can make it feel borderline unfinishable. In saying that, I enjoyed that the campaign went for something different. However, be aware of what you're getting yourself into for the campaign. So overall, the campaign and survival maps will give you dozens of hours of content and even hundreds of hours of replayability. So when it comes to strategy games on the console, there are two major criteria that impact my experience. Firstly, it is how intuitive the controls are. So this means how hard is it to learn the control layout and get used to it. And secondly, once you learn the controls, do you start to get used to them? I bring this up because They Are Billions controls did not feel intuitive. However, the longer I played, the more I got used to the layout. And to the game's credit, it does have a quick guide menu that you can bring up at any time. So what do I mean by the controls? So there's a few reasons why the control layout didn't feel immediately intuitive. So some controller choices, like clicking on your left joystick to move faster around the map, felt tedious. And restricting of the left bumper to use commands like seeing enemy health felt cumbersome. But that may just come down to personal preference, because there are some good design choices, like buildings and repairing being quickly accessible with a quick button menu. However, little quality of life upgrades, like making more use commands like having troops patrol be more easily accessible with less button clicks, would make the experience easier. In saying that, after not playing the game for a few days and coming back to it, I was still able to easily remember most of the controls after a few minutes. But what made the controls of the game work on a console is the game's grid-based building system and its instant pause. So in They Are Billions, you can press start to pause the game at any time. And on a controller, this feature is straight up a necessity. And this is true especially early game before you can get a wall up. It was a necessity for me to pause the game and be able to send my troops to deal with random enemies as they would try to sneak into the least defended sections of my base. I also found that the pause was invaluable for giving me a second to help plan my base and extra time to compensate for using controller. But controller talk aside, They Are Billions also has keyboard and mouse support on console. And while the console version misses out on mods, performance-wise, it works smoothly. Even with thousands of enemies on the screen, I didn't experience any major frame rate drops or performance issues. Overall, They Are Billions is a real-time strategy game that does an amazing job standing out compared to others in the genre. Its steampunk theme, focused on horde mode defense, and its unforgiving difficulty for new players is an experience that you can rarely find, and this is especially true on console. However, understandably, the difficult structure of the game and its ability to make you lose hours of gameplay nearly instantly means it may not be the right fit for everyone. So, if you're looking for a base building real-time strategy game where you focus on building defenses, where juggling city management can be as much of a challenge as the enemy waves, then They Are Billions may be the game for you. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe.